Hey guys, this is the Pelican Man, and this is day 6, I believe, of drawing every day. So today's topic is going to be about what if Britain, or the UK, or the United Kingdom, like the British Empire, never fully colonized Australia. So, just to give some history context here, in 1788, when uh, Captain Phillip, James Cook's right hand man, or was it? Yeah, 1788 and 1789, one of those two eras. One of those 2 years, I believe it was 1788, top of my head, came to Australia on the first voyage. They had a whole lot of men. Now, they only actually claimed the eastern half of Australia, so Sydney, uh, like Sydney area, Queensland area. The rest of Australia didn't get tagged along immediately. Now, the original reason for this was because they left it there in case the Portuguese or the Spanish wanted to take it for themselves. But when it was coming increasingly more obvious that they weren't, they took it and France. So France wouldn't take it. Now, it was likely France was going to take it anyway because during this era, they had Napoleon and they were dealing with a bunch of wars and they'd recently sold part of America. But in for this whole thing to work, Napoleon either wasn't in power, the revolution didn't happen, or Napoleon was on a friendly basis with everyone. I don't see any. The most likely of this to happen was for a alternate history route where the navy, or the French Empire, French Kingdom, whatever you want to call it, I thought it was called, um, didn't sacrifice, like didn't lose their monarchy, and they set ashore in sometime close to around the 1790s. Now, how would this change the political landscape of Australia today? That's a very big thing to ask that no one's asking. But is the alternative to this would be that there would have been at least one civil war in Australian history. Now, there was a few times where Australia could have went to civil war, but there was a few battles over like miners' rights and stuff. There was also the blackbirding, which could have potentially gone to civil war, but I don't believe would have. It's very unlikely it would have. Um, it was very unjust and not right, but I don't see be going to civil war over that. But if the French had landed on the western side of Australia and the Brits had known it, like the Brits would have known, it would have caused a civil war. This comes down to a few things. So one, the gold rushes of the early 1880s. Um, this being a very competitive time for different states in Australia, considering WA being one of the biggest mining states, also the largest state. Um, Also, in this alternate timeline, Aboriginals are much better off, at least in the Western Hemisphere. This being, you know, the Aboriginals being much better off. The reason I say this is because French were never actually much big on sending people over and colonizing areas. They were more so bigger on working with the natives and getting them more up to speed with. Well, that's how they did it in Americas at least. So I see this as their route for Australia. Now, reason I say they would go to civil war is because by 1901, Australia had colonized, and the only reason we would have colonized as an entire continent was because it was all British society. Now, WA would have could have been their own separate government. This also being stated, I don't believe would have, but the borders would have looked a bit different. This also means that Australia is now divided into two countries. So it would no longer just be a continent plus a state, a continent plus a country. It'd be it'd be like any other continent in the world besides the South Pole or Antarctica. Is this a good thing? Maybe more diversity in what you said, like things, like more diversity in Australia as a whole. Also, I believe the white Australian policy would have only affected half of the country if we're going to, if we're going to be honest, it would only affect half the country. That's because it was divided now in two. I don't see why, if people came from France or there was some French colonizers, and majority of them being Aboriginal, I don't see why why they would want to go to the eastern and make an entire nation. I don't see that working at all unless there was a civil war that made it as such, meaning that the this entire different timeline is now broken and works completely differently. Another thing is that if we were to go to civil war, it wouldn't be your generic one. It'd be fought for the reason of land. So it would probably be a generic one, eh? You know. Another thing is that it would have affected people a lot more. I believe there would be a lot less slavery in Australia. Before people say, "Oh, there was slavery in Australia," yeah, there was. Australia, once again, we called it blackbirding. We took people from Asian states and the Torres Straits, and we put them on sugarcane farms or pearl farming, WA. My knowledge, yes, the French did do slavery, but they were wasn't as major. That could be wrong. Don't quote me. But yeah, Australia would be a very different political landscape, especially if like going to left and right of things. Uh, the only other, I believe, the only other thing that could have happened was we would have still been a complete nation by the end of World War Two. Now, I say this because by the end of World War Two, Australia was needing of more people, and the easiest way of doing that would have been, hey, let's federalize and let's work both ways. If this means we have to get rid of the White Australia policy, means we have to get rid of the White Australia policy. It's kind of getting outdated anyway. Not saying it was a good thing, it's not, but the only reason for the White Australia policy was so that Asians would not steal their gold, which is horrible. But I believe the White Australia policy probably wouldn't have existed if the French had colonized the other side of the country. Also, Australia would have seen probably a lot more action in both wars. This is because, they'd hire like more Aboriginal to go. Yeah. Also believe that more Aboriginals would have moved over to WA. It being kind of like the States during their own time of slavery, where they'd be picked up, thrown on their back. Like, not picked up and thrown on the back, but they'd be on the Freedom Trail and then gone into Canada. I believe that the western side of Australia would have been the same, and I believe Northern Territory would have been a spot where they would fight for, because at the moment 3% of Australia is Aboriginals and 2% lives there. But by the end of World War II, the White Australia, I believe the White Australia policy would have been destroyed, or abolished. Both sides would have either federalized or made a union together, where if you're Australian, like, you are now considered Australian. If you live in either of these countries, you can freely travel back and forth. Yeah. If you guys like this, like and subscribe. This has been the Pelican Man. Remember, stress your best because you never know who's watching. And that's my video for today. Have a lovely day, my people. Goodbye.